Seems like in the animation landscape, things are a lot different now. The top dogs you thought were at the top are surprisingly not. Sure, you could say Disney is riding high with their live action films, with Lilo and Stitch making $1 billion, and hey, they have Zootopia 2, which is probably also going to make $1 billion. But at the same time, Disney's right-hand man, Pixar, hasn't been doing so well recently. You could say that, yeah, Inside Out 2 came out a year ago and became one of the highest grossing animated movies of all time before being taken over by Neza 2, but that was a sequel to a highly popular movie. And then not even a year later, we have Elio release and it flops hard. Not only was it having the worst Pixar opening of all time, it is the worst Pixar box office of all time. But that's not to say that the movie is bad in any right. Elio was a good movie. I enjoyed it. But it's coming down to Pixar not adapting to the animation landscape of what people want to see. Sony Animation Pictures has been riding high this year. Without even needing Spider-Verse, they had K-pop Demon Hunters release this year, and now it's like the biggest animated movie, if not probably the biggest movie this year in terms of popularity, in toys and music, and every department this movie is just dominating. And I think it's going to be Netflix and Sony's crown jewel. And Pixar is still left in the dust here regardless. Their next movie, Hopper's releasing next year, I feel is going to fall into the same problem that Elio did. Sure, a lot of people watched the trailer, but walking out of it, everyone just seems kinda meh on it. Most people see this movie and just say, yeah, I can wait for this on Disney Plus. And Elio had that same thing happen. Not a lot of people showed up to the movie in theaters. It did terrible. But what do you know, when it releases on streaming, it becomes the #1 movie on streaming. People were interested, but the movie simply just wasn't worth going to theaters for some people in their eyes. And that's just not a streaming problem. It's just dealing with Pixar not really pushing the bar for what it can do. A lot of these stories are playing it safe. And I can say some Pixar trailers kind of do the movie dirty in some aspects, and marketing, definitely marketing. But you could say that Pixar is kind of playing it safe in some of the stories they can tell. They can tackle a lot more mature topics. One movie in particular, which is so underrated because not a lot of people were able to see it because not a lot of people talked about it when it initially released, but Pixar's is Soul that released in 2020. This movie, it wasn't necessarily dark, but it was a mature topic about life and death and purpose in life. And that in theaters, I know would have done amazing. I mean, it won the Oscar. It was a great movie, but that was a little speck of what Pixar can do moving forward with their films. And I'm not gonna say that the movies that came after that were bad. Luca, Turning Red, Elemental, all those movies were great in their own right. And hey, people thought Elemental was going to end up being the worst box office for Pixar, but word of mouth pushed the movie farther and it reached $500 million, which is great on that part. But I've seen Pixar delve into this, and not a lot of people know, but there was a Disney Plus series earlier this year called Win or Lose, and this show was surprisingly really good, and especially with some of its episodes and the topics it tackled. They were surprisingly really mature for a Pixar show, and were just real situations that a lot of people can relate to and can understand where these characters are coming from in their decisions and how the story progresses. And I really did love that series. It doesn't need a sequel, it doesn't need, anything after, but it is a series I would recommend. And I feel like Pixar knows that these originals aren't really doing too well, which is why they're forcing these sequels upon us. Yes, Toy Story 5 is going to be coming out next year, and that will probably overtake Inside Out 2 as one of the highest grossing animated movies. And they're not stopping there regarding sequels. Incredibles 3 will release sometime in the later end of this decade, and Incredibles 3 does get a pass. I feel like Incredibles is worthy of a trilogy, and I feel a third movie can definitely flesh out this world, which we've only really seen a little bit of it, just in my my opinion. There is so much that could be told in this universe. So Incredibles 3 gets a pass. But one movie that I think almost everyone saw no purpose in having a sequel and was clearly for the money is Coco 2 releasing in 2029. This was accidentally leaked, and then Pixar just had to announce it that yes, this movie was happening, but it was clearly intentional that the first movie was supposed to be a one and done movie and nothing else was going to come after that. It had a great story, great characters, really emotional ending, really one of the gut punches, and one of the best Pixar movies from the end of the 2010s. So in that aspect, I really hope they don't start making sequels to movies that really don't need it. We don't need a Ratatouille 2. We don't need an Up 2. We don't need those movies. Hopefully Pixar just doesn't say, alright, well if originals aren't gonna work, we're just gonna do sequel and make billions off of them. Which, if Toy Story 5 does really well, which it is, expect another movie. One movie that I do have my eye on that is original that will be releasing in 2027 is Pixar's Gato. This was announced a few months back and features a black cat, and this will be coming from the same director as Luca. Luca was a great film. And the topic this film follows is following a cat that is starting to realize if he's really lived out his 9 lives the correct way. He seems like he's been under a mob boss, and this film also takes place in Italy, and I do see a bit of a spark of a movie here that could be really touching towards the end. But we obviously just have to wait and see how this movie plans out. But I do have faith director-wise. Pixar is in a weird position. It's making a lot of money, but it's also not sometimes in some years. It's going to be pumping out sequels, but at the same time, they can't do that forever. They need new original properties to keep the company moving forward. You can only milk Toy Story so much. And regarding a lot of the films that have come out in this decade, sure, there are films that could be expanded upon, but I don't think Pixar has swung where they've hit a movie that pushes the company forward in a way that no one will be expecting. An interesting comparison is to Sony Pictures Animation. They were stuck in an endless loop of really bad movies, and I guess you could say some good in between, but all it took was one movie, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, to completely flip the studio on its head, and after that, almost every movie that came out after that movie was phenomenal in storytelling and animation and brought the studio to a whole nother level. Now, am I saying that Pixar needs to make Spider-Verse for it to be back on top again? No, not necessarily, but Pixar should adapt to the storytelling that a lot of these other films are trying to convey and that audiences are willing to go to. They've shown in some movies and shows that they're capable of doing it. They just have to give that swing, that one attempt, and if it succeeds, Pixar will definitely be back in a great spot again. But that's just my opinion. All these Pixar films that I've talked about have been great. I know there are a lot of people's favorite movies, and I know a lot of people love Elio. It just didn't get the treatment it deserved. But in terms of the future, what do you want to see Pixar doing? Do you think more mature storytelling is where they should go in future movies, or do you think they should stay in the same spot they are right now? I'm curious to see, because this is a big topic of Pixar's future moving forward, and honestly, I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Let me know down in the comments, and I will catch you guys in the next video.